friends, welcome back to Faith and Arrow Homestead. My name is Jaylee and today we are going to make homemade macaroni and cheese. Is that not just one of the most comforting, warm in your belly foods? And Tom and I are hosting a dinner party and we're having chili, macaroni and cheese, cornbread, sourdough bread. And so I've already made the chili, although I think I'm going to put the macaroni and cheese video up before the chili recipe. But I made the chili yesterday, it's in the fridge, and we're going to make the macaroni and cheese today. Macaroni and cheese is so easy to make, and I would even argue that in this case, it's almost just as easy as making boxed macaroni and cheese, because boxed macaroni and cheese has some steps as well. This has just a couple more steps and you end up with a much healthier and a way more delicious product. My mom has been making this macaroni and cheese for years and years. This is her recipe. She makes it for Thanksgiving every year. It is a wonderful side dish and you can also eat it on its own for dinner as well. Throw a little chicken in there, a little sausage, veggies, broccoli. It's so good and so easy. So let's go ahead and get started. The very first thing I'm going to do is cook up my noodles al dente. You want them underdone just a little bit because this is actually going to be baked and you don't want them to become mushy or anything. So undercook them a little bit. I usually use elbows. My mom always uses cavatappi. I don't know how to say that. And I've used that before as well. It's a really great noodle. And then while I was at the store, I also found these campanelli. And I thought they just looked so fun, like such a cool shape. So I'm gonna use elbows and these campanellis. You'll hear me say in the chili recipe that I don't like to double things on camera because I don't want to confuse you with the different measurements. I am gonna go ahead and double this so I don't have to do it twice, but I will give you the original serving measurements. I'm not gonna give you the doubled measurements. And this is all going to be on my website, so don't worry about trying to write any of it down. So let's go ahead and cook up this pasta. All right, we are over at the stove. I'm going to turn this on medium-low. And this is already pretty warm because it had our pasta in here. We are going to melt half a cup or 1 stick of butter in this pot. All right, our butter is melted and as you can see, it's a little bubbly. Next, we're gonna add half a cup of flour. I've got my whisk. I always recommend using a whisk when you're making a roux, a bechamel, a cheese sauce. Anytime you're whisking flour in, it's really best to do just that, use a whisk. And I'm going to add it in slowly and whisk it in completely before I add more. And this helps you end up with a really nice, smooth final product. So after you're done adding in all of the flour, you end up having something that looks very sandy, and this is normal. So the next step is to add our milk. We're going to add 4 cups of milk, and we're going to do it very slowly. Whisk it in completely before you add more. So my mom's recipe actually said to warm the milk first. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, oh man, that would be so helpful. And I've not been doing that with any bechamel or cheese sauce. I haven't been doing that. And I could see how it would be useful because right now I've added in about half of our milk. And I need to give this a second to come back up to temperature because this milk is cold from being in the fridge. And so it's going to take a little bit more time to do this. But I look at it this way. You're either taking the time to warm up the milk or you're taking the time to wait for your sauce to warm back up. But you're spending the time one way or the other. So although I do think that that's a solid piece of advice, I don't think it's necessary. But I am going to include it in the recipe card because this is my mom's recipe and I want the written recipe to stay true to her and what she wrote. But don't feel like you have to do that because I didn't and it's still working out fine. So just keep whisking the milk into the flour butter mixture. I don't add more milk until all of the loose liquid has been absorbed into the mixture. Like you can see here, this is still very wet. So I'm not gonna add more milk yet. I'm gonna give this a minute to come back up to temperature. I'm gonna keep whisking. And if you do it this way, you end up with a really nice, smooth cheese sauce. I just wanted to try to give you a close-up here. Look at how beautiful this is. Let me show you using a spoon. That is gorgeous. Perfect, perfect thickness. Just now when I said perfect thickness, you may have been thinking, that actually looks a little thin, but we're not done. There is more to go, and trust me on this, this is the perfect thickness. Next up, we are going to add our seasonings. And these seasonings are going to sound so strange to you, but you just have to trust me on this. They're delicious. The first thing that we're going to add is 1 teaspoon of ground mustard. We're going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon, which I only have a 1/4 teaspoon, so I just do half of a 1/4. 1/8 a teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/8 a teaspoon of cayenne, a true 1/4 a teaspoon of pepper, a 1/4 a teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 a teaspoon of Worcestershire. Now, these seasonings that I'm telling you about can be altered to suit your taste in whatever way. Sometimes I add more Worcestershire because I just really love it. I love the flavor a lot. You can increase the salt, the pepper, you can decrease the ground mustard, you can omit the ground mustard. Sometimes I haven't had it on hand and I've left it out and it's still been a delicious macaroni and cheese. So do with that what you will, but that's the combination that I like to use. And my mom's recipe actually says pinch, splash. And so I've put actual measurements on it for the sake of having the recipe be online. So yeah, adjust it to what you think is best. This is looking amazing. The next thing we're going to do is actually add our noodles. So I'm done with the whisk at this point because the whisk is just gonna make things difficult. I usually add half the noodles, get that mixed into your sauce, and then I add the other half of the noodles. It just makes it easier. Oh my gosh, this looks amazing. I cannot wait to eat this tonight. I hope everybody really enjoys it. I don't see how they couldn't. Oh yeah, this looks great. All right, the very last step is to add your cheese. I'm not sure what my mom uses. The recipe didn't, or does it say? It just says 3 to 4 cups of shredded cheese. So I'm not sure what her go-to was. My go-to is half cheddar, half Gruyere. Gruyere is actually my favorite cheese. I love that cheese so much. And so I've got 50-50 here, plus I have a couple slices of Colby Jack from when we had sandwiches left over that I need to use. I went ahead and grated this before we started filming. So just a little at a time, you're going to add some cheese into your noodle sauce mixture. Mix it in. I moved over to the counter so that I could talk to you, but you're probably doing this on your stovetop, so feel free to turn the heat back on low to assist in you melting it if you're finding that it's struggling to melt. What you do not want to do is add all of the cheese in at once. Ask us how we know. My mom literally had this as a note in her recipe because if you do that, it is going to turn into one massive clump of cheese that you're going to end up getting quite the arm workout trying to break up. And the longer you stir this, the more likely you are to damage your pasta noodles, to break them up, whatnot. So add the cheese in increments and let it start to melt. Stir gently, and before you know it, you'll have all your cheese mixed into your macaroni and cheese. This macaroni and cheese is just out of control. It is so good. Let me see if I can show it to you quick. It's so good. Let's try a bite together. I personally would add more salt, but I'm not going to because this is for a party and not everybody might like it as salty as I do, so I'll leave the salt out and the pepper. But otherwise, the other spices and the other seasonings in here are so well balanced and so good. Look at that. Ugh. So good. I'm gonna rinse off my fork here because I want one more bite. Let me try one of these fun noodles. Get an elbow in there too. Man, that's good. All right, the last thing, which I'm actually not going to do it right now because it's only 10 o'clock in the morning and we're not, this is for dinner. So I'm going to put it in a container, cover it with foil, a baking dish, a casserole dish, cover it with foil, store it in the fridge. And then when it comes time to serve this, I'm going to preheat the oven to 350 and I'm going to bake it for just a few minutes, maybe 10. Here's where you can kind of get crazy with it. You could add more cheese on top. You could do a breadcrumb mixture. I know lots of people like to do that. I do not like breadcrumbs on my mac and cheese. However, in the recipe on the website, down in the notes, I did include a quick little recipe for adding breadcrumbs if you want to. You would do that before putting it in the oven. You could add bacon, herbs. You could add other herbs. There's any number of things that you could do at this stage to really make this individual to you. You could add cubed chicken, sausage, like I said earlier, veggies. I would add any of those things before you bake it because baking it with the additions will help it all just blend really well and just be so scrumptious. And then there's one other little tip that I want to give you that I've learned. If you are heating this up after the fact, like obviously if we were going to eat this right now, it's perfect, it's ready, nothing else needs to be done to it. If you are storing it in the fridge and you're going to heat it up, especially if you're going to heat it up in the microwave versus on the stove, macaroni and cheese naturally can be a little dry left when it's not fresh, right? That's because the noodles are absorbing some of the moisture. That's why you're cooking them al dente. These are perfect. If I had cooked them any more, they'd be mushy. So that's an important step. But because they absorb some of the moisture when you're eating this not fresh, you need to add a little bit of liquid. So you could add more milk, you could add more butter. My secret weapon to making really good leftover macaroni and cheese is to add a little bit of chicken broth. The fat in the chicken broth just really helps like coat the noodles and makes it really, really luxurious as a leftover macaroni and cheese, and it adds a little bit more flavor. That's my favorite way to heat up macaroni and cheese. I just go ahead and do it. I haven't even put it in the microwave yet. I add a splash of chicken broth and then I heat it up and it's perfect. Perhaps even a little better the second time. So anyway, guys, I just wanted to come to you with this excellent macaroni and cheese recipe. Macaroni and cheese, I will be honest with you, I do still purchase store-bought macaroni and cheese. In fact, I just did. I still have the bag down here. This is the one that I buy. Because, you know, you gotta still have some convenience in your life somewhere, and sometimes I'm real tired and I don't feel like making a whole dinner, and I will just make a box of macaroni and cheese. And my sweet, sweet husband doesn't say a word. He eats the macaroni and cheese. Normally I serve it with buttered toast, and that's what we eat, and he's fine with it. And so that's one of my cheat items. However, this does not stand a chance when compared to this. This is garbaggio compared to this homemade macaroni and cheese. So I will say that they both have their place, and good, better, best. I'm doing the best I can over here. I definitely still consume some convenience items. And like I said when I gave you guys the cinnamon roll recipe, I'll say it about this too, because I can attest to it. What a blessing this is to your family. To take this took no time at all. What is this video? 15 minutes? And that's like, it took me about 20. And that was with me filming and moving things around and doing the most. What a blessing to do this for your family. And I say that because my mom has been blessing us with this homemade macaroni and cheese for as long as I can remember. Thanksgiving, Christmas. She has been making this macaroni and cheese. It's my sister's absolute favorite. It's one of my favorites. And it's delicious, and it is a blessing to your family. So I highly recommend you take the time, the 5 extra minutes that it takes to do this versus that, to get this on your table for yourself and for your family. So thanks so much for hanging out with me today. The recipe is going to be down in the description. I've got the chili recipe coming out after this one, so stay tuned for that. That dinner is actually tonight. And I'm going to, the way I'd like it to be served is the macaroni and cheese as a base with the chili poured on top. You eat it together with buttered sourdough bread. What a delicious dinner. I can't wait to share it with my friends. Can't wait to see you in my next video, guys. Have faith and keep moving forward. Bye.